What? 2.5 what?
July 23rd school board meeting is now in order. Dr. Atha?
Mrs. Willis, members of the Board of Trustees, I don't know, that seemed a little loud, didn't it? Yeah, let's do a pledge. Moment of silence and a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. We had an amazing ribbon cutting at Cary Ridge for the new wing there for our cross-categorical program. And so thank you to everyone who was there and planned and prepared. Tonight, we're going to have a quick overview of some of our priorities and work that has been taking place in the curriculum department. So I'll start it off with a little bit of strategic overview with our CQI and PLC process. And then Alicia and Matt will talk a little bit about some of the big ticket items at the high school that we want you to know about. Then Lindsay, Chase, Carla, and Crystal will talk about the program reviews in special education and our English language learners EL or for our multilingual students and families. Kyle's going to give you a little bit of an overview of the employability skills and standards from the state of Indiana. Ryan will give us a resource update, and then I believe Dr. Kaiser will do a quick wrap-up. So here we go. So one of the things that within the curriculum department, as we have been working on our strategic plan and strategic direction, we hear this a lot since Dr. Kaiser and I arrived, right? We hire the best. And what we would say and what I often say to folks is that's a given, right? That we're a school corporation and everyone says that. However, some people don't know what you say next. Sometimes you hear and get out of their way. No. We are not a search firm. We are a school district. So we hire the best and we help them get better. That's what we do. We model, we're a mirror image for what we want to see in the classroom. And so the other strategic priority we've identified is results, because no matter how good we are, there's always a way to deliver better results. So that is at the heart of continuous improvement, which is what we're about here. So through that, we've identified some growth mindset principles. The DMGB stands for doesn't matter, get better. So that's my response to anything you say to me. Doesn't matter, get better, right? This didn't go the way we want. Doesn't matter, get better. We won, that's okay. Doesn't matter, get better. Because that's the mindset we want, a continuous improvement. So where you are is okay, staying there is not. Building skills is a process. It takes time. You have to take action and you need to be disciplined. The key to growth is your level of effort, not your knowledge, talent, ability, or experience. You grow and get better by putting in effort. I always say, I point to Braden Smith. If you look at Braden, and even over the years, you would not think that he was a high-level basketball player, but when you watch him play, because of his effort, and he has become one. Embracing discomfort is part of the process. Making mistakes is part of the process. Learning from those mistakes is. You need teammates. That's what we're about. So that's why we focus on a collaborative culture, and you need to be a great teammate. This is where I say back in the day, probably I'll say Dr. Kaiser and myself are probably the two oldest. It used to be enough to be a great teacher. You show up, you close your door, and you have a group of kids and you work your tail off. That no longer works today. Not only do you have to be a great teacher, you have to be a great colleague. You have to work together. Not any one of us has the knowledge and abilities to meet the needs of all our kids, so we have to work together. You make the team better by making yourself better. Again, you're focusing on growing, and everybody needs a coach and actionable feedback. So Mike and I had a conversation about this the other day. I'm a big believer. My dad finished his career as an athletic director, and some of the best professionals in the world have coaches because they want to get better and improve. Our continuous improvement, you hear Dr. Kaiser talk a lot about continuous quality improvement. Here's the definition of continuous quality improvement. I'm not going to read that to you, but it's working in a process so that we exceed our stakeholders' expectations. You hear us talk about the PLC process, which involves our educators. We work collaboratively. We do what we call learning cycles. But the key to PLCs is it is the best professional development because it's job embedded. You try something, you monitor the results, you come back and you talk to your teammates, you look at data, and you keep trying to improve on what's working. So here, we have created, these are the 8 characteristics of the CQI PLC process. We've merged what Solution Tree has done with PLCs and what Dr. Kaiser brought to us from CQI. And so you have shared mission, vision, values, and goals. You have a collaborative culture focused on learning. Collective inquiry, that means we're trying things, so we're always looking for best practice and monitoring our current reality. We have to know where we are so we can get better. Action, we always take action. We learn by doing. A commitment to continuous improvement. I hope you saw that was embedded in where we started tonight. Results orientation. So you focus on learning, you look at the results. And then we conduct regular systems of systems talks, and we celebrate and recognize our successes, especially our student-centered successes. We do that every month at the school board meetings. So tonight, I just want to focus on the number 1, shared mission, vision, values, and goals. Some of this you know, but I just want to set the framework for what we're doing. So the 4 pillars of a PLC. The values piece really shifts from what are our values, but what are those commitments we make to each other? How are we going to behave? So our mission is to ensure high levels of learning and growth for each student. Something I want you to know is high levels of learning. What does that mean? That means what we deem essential at a grade level or better for our academics and employability skills. So the state has academic standards and employability standards, and so we need to unpack those into skills, and that's what we should be focused on for every child. Now, will kids learn more than that? Absolutely, right? We're going to deem this as essential. Many kids will learn way more than essential. The other thing I want you to know is the word each was chosen intentionally. And what that means is we'd heard, I think, all students, that what we want is to say each student in our district has unique gifts and talents, and we're going to ensure that they all master those essential learnings. Our vision is all rocks are life ready. Life ready means students are prepared to do what they want to do after college. So if they want, or after high school, if they want to go to college, they're prepared to go to college and be successful. If they want to enter the workforce, they're prepared to enter the workforce and be successful. If they want to go to the military, they're prepared to enter the military and be successful. So being life ready is being prepared. Alicia and Matt will talk a little bit more about that from the high school perspective. Our collective commitments, this is the work we did this year. I don't know if we really shared it out yet, so we're going to have a focus on, Dr. Kaiser wants to have a focus on that this year to getting it out to all of our stakeholders. But we came up with 3 commitments. Our academic leads, we're committed to literacy, problem solving, critical thinking, effective communication, and just developing a passion for learning. In the in the wellness leaf, we're committed to equipping the Rocks with the emotional intelligence, the physical well-being, the social connectedness, and a strong sense of belonging, creating through positive relationships. And finally, in the career, we're committed to equipping all Rocks with those employability skills to be successful and be productive, independent, and interdependent. So there's two words there. They need to be able to function independent, but then in a world that we live in today, certainly you have to work with others, so you need to be interdependent and produce positive outcomes. So what's important about our collective commitments? I highlighted two words in each of these statements, and it means our Life Ready statements are essential skills and that are part of our guaranteed and viable curriculum. A guaranteed and viable curriculum is what we are committed that each student learns. It's our promise, what we're trying to deliver across the entire district. So when you hear Dr. Kaiser say vertical and horizontal articulation or alignment, what it means is in this grade level across all our schools, we're committed to these learnings and developing these skills. So finally, in that first characteristic, goals, so where we are now is through the work that we've been doing, each school sets broad goals annually to guide its CQI work through the PLC process. So they're looking at their data, trying to say, okay, where are we doing well and where do we need to improve? And then we talk to them through the systems meetings about that. So last thing. We have a learning target template. It was kind of brought from Dr. Kaiser. We tweak with it every year. Don't push it yet. Oh, she did it. And you don't have access. That's all right. The access said everyone in Westfield, so I don't know why that didn't come up. Anyway, I'll talk to it. So the key to this learning target template and our focus is we have performance targets and we have learning targets. So a lot in our department, we focus on the learning targets, not performance targets. And here's why, and I don't know if that's doesn't seem as big as it once was, but so again, that growth mindset, when you, Carolyn Dweck, who is the Stanford professor who wrote the book on growth mindset, when you focus on performance goals, you are motivated by in the value of that attribute, such as intelligence or leadership. So that's what drives you. When you focus on learning, that's what dominates, and that's the attribute you try to develop. So that's what we're focused on in our department. In performance, when you worry about performance more, you're worried about tasks that make you look good and you can pat yourself on the back. A shift towards learning goals will make educators more open to exploring opportunities to acquire knowledge from others. Again, as we develop that collaborative environment and the fact that we learn by doing and from each other, that's our focus. And ultimately, a PLC stands for Professional Learning Community, so we're a community of learners. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Alicia to talk about some high school. There we go. We're starting all over. Stacy will get us where we need to be.
All right. That's right. I like that. Okay. Yeah, any questions about what he presented? A lot of what he presented will transition beautifully into our update as we talk about Life Ready. But any questions for
And
John?
one thing for the board, John and his team has really taken the cumulative of what we've done over the last 3 years and kind of recreated our circle, and really now we're really to move forward and continue that alignment process, especially the horizontal at grade level. And that's so critical for getting all second grade teachers on the same page, third grade, high school history teachers, et cetera. So it's a process we've been working on for 3 years.
All right, so at the high school, we are continuing on that life-ready journey to prepare the students for what we say the day after graduation. And really, we spend a lot of time reflecting on what this means as we approach commencement. And what we really want is, as we shake those seniors' hands, to know that we have provided each and every one with every opportunity to gain those skills so that the doors are wide open to them. What I really get fired up about is when I know some of those doors have been closed for students and they shouldn't. They shouldn't be. So we want a wide range of experiences for our students, both in the classroom and then, extracurricularly, chances to lead, chances to serve. And ultimately, as John talked about, we're on a skills focus and a skills journey. It used to be about gaining content knowledge. That was really what it was all about is, can you quote the facts? Do you know that information? And as much as I love Jeopardy, okay, I absolutely love it, but I know that those trivial facts aren't going to be what makes me life ready. So that's going to continue to be our focus. A shout out to Ashley kind of for this new graphic that you'll see hanging in our district and our buildings as well, but it highlights that mission and vision that John talked about. And then I really love how it was a variety of stakeholders who came up with what are the academic, career, and wellness skills that each and every building in the district is going to work towards. And so we used to have, you've probably seen our old graphic where it showed the skills in the different areas. First of all, the graphic had a typo, we know that, and it didn't look very nice. It looks nicer, but even more importantly, knowing that as a district, we're working toward these skills, instilling these skills in each and every classroom. So academics, I highlighted literacy and problem solving, knowing that that's going to be a focus in every classroom and beyond. In career, those employability skills that the state has outlined for us, that we're going to be working toward those. Our students are going to focus on being a good team player, how to collaborate, how to communicate effectively. And then the wellness leaf, knowing that we were able to highlight more of these. So we know it's about emotional intelligence. It's about physical wellness, as well as just, the self-awareness, the relationships piece, the connections piece that we're focusing on. So I'm really excited about the rebrand there and just the recommitment to that focus. And this is something as a part of our hiring process we're very focused on. We ask our candidates, tell us how you will make these skills alive in your classroom, how you will teach to the whole student. That's a huge part of our process and something that we continuously review and have our teams working on throughout the year. Rigor and preparation, big. Rigor for all is one of our chief cornerstones and values that each and every student needs to think critically, needs to be challenged. We've always said we're going to hold expectations high, but we are going to support the heck out of our students. We're going to come up with tiers of support, layers of support for them. We are going to meet them where they are, be responsive to their needs, but then we're going to stretch. We're going to stretch them. So you'll hear that said a lot too. What's your stretch? As counselors are meeting with students, what's your stretch as we talk to students about how they can be prepared? So a couple just academic celebrations that John asked that I share out, as well as some focal points for this upcoming school year. So first of all, we're very excited. This is hot off the press, is our AP Equity and Excellence reports, and it is neat to see. You can see the 2022 through 2024 that we have increased our passing rates, while also significantly increasing the number of students taking the exams. So a lot of times you'll see that number be stagnant or even drop as you increase more, because that is a big thing. I don't want just our elite taking the AP. It is our belief that if we have prepared our students, that each and every one could take one by the time they get to their senior year, that we're going to continue to prepare them with critical thinking and with skills and support them along the way. So I'm really excited about that. You can kind of see that many, the percent of the class or the class summary who's taken those. So highest percentage of students passing an exam since 2021. So that's really good news. I care even more about this, however. And what this is showing here is, I've talked pretty openly about the fact that when we say each and every student, when we say all, it would be easy to hide behind our accolades, that we can put out there, U.S. News and, report and all of that. But I really want to make sure that each and every student, so when you drill down and you take a look at our students of color or our free and reduced student population, our multilingual learners, our Hispanic, that they too are having the confidence and the skills to stretch themselves. I want to see classrooms of diversity across our building. And so what you see here is that in 2 years' time, we have almost doubled the amount of students in our subgroup who have had the courage to take an AP course, and then also that same percentage to pass it. And we want to continue that. We want that number only to grow. And part of what that is our staff making the shift that you don't need to have this list of prerequisites for this student to have success in the course, or only this student who's had these experiences can be successful. No, adopting the mindset that put any student in my room and we will give them the skills. We will also provide support during our core. We did several study groups this year during core for students who had taken an AP course for the first time, and just to help teach them the how when it comes to doing something that might be outside their comfort zone or to challenge them. So we're going to continue to let that mindset and that just structure of support spread so that these numbers can continue to advance. But that was a really, really huge goal when I became principal 4 years ago, and I'm glad to see we're making positive strides there.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So are you saying the students, when they visit with their guidance counselor, they would be able to be informed about the class, or they have to be prepared to say, I want to be in that class?
So it's a combination. Yes, our counselors are really asking that what's that stretch question. And then we also have where I would say, so AVID, which has now become Spark. That's the Westfield version right now. But all of those students from their first experience in Spark have been told that you're going to take that stretch. And so we have those students that are doing that. And then we're just being more intentional about tracking that, presenting that to parents and different things like that, but really making it so we'll prepare you, we'll walk alongside you, and have that courage.
I would just say, as a parent perspective, I have no idea what my kids are asking to sign up for. I'd love
Yes.
to do that. So, but I would say if, Mrs. Worth or whoever's teaching those Spark
Yes.
students could be an advocate to help them when
Yes.
they're doing their classes, I think that
Yes.
would maybe increase the numbers.
I would agree. There's more we can do there to get the word out to students from our teachers and staff.
Also, there's a tool built into our SAT and PSAT data called AP Potential. So after a student takes the PSAT or SAT, then it will give us a list of this student has potential to be successful in this AP course. And so that allows us to strategically target students, and especially students that might not automatically sign up for a course, of saying, hey, we have indications that you can be successful in this, and guide those conversations.
And a lot of times, our leadership team or our counselors will call those students down and have that conversation with them as well. So, but there's more we want to do. I agree, Amber, to get the word out to parents and to students and to encourage them. When we looked at the AP Potential, it was really neat to see, wow, we're really trying to reach students, but we had even far more students that showed potential than were enrolled. And they even broke it down for us by course. So you could see which course, we're not meeting the mark there. Why are we only running this course at this many students when this many students showed AP potential?
Yeah, well, I think it's just the gap of parents not being
I know.
next to their student when they're signing up for courses. Because
Yes.
if you don't have someone that really wants to take that hard class, they're just gonna,
Absolutely, they'll want to take that easy route. So I think you've given us some good things to even go back and chew on. How do we really get this word out? Because it's a huge goal, and I agree, it would be even that much higher with better messaging and just more students and parents
we
having the
just-
courage.
Do we discourage kids from taking any of these classes that may not show
Nope.
up on their radar?
Nope. And so what I would say, what's key tonight and what you have seen is the research behind momentum and why, this is what I just introduced, by the way, PLC process, and you learn by doing. So there's a myth that buy-in happens on the front end. It doesn't. It happens after you try something different and you get different results. That's how your belief changes. And so as Alicia shares this data with her staff, they start to believe more kids can. And then their verbiage becomes, hey, Amber, I know you can do this. You ought to try it. And so you're building confidence in kids and teachers. And so the more kids, the more my friend Ryan was successful, the more chance I believe I can. I'd say, you know what? I'll try it, right? Now, little sidebar when Ryan gets here, same thing with new resource implementation. Until you try it, right, you're just giving me your thoughts on it, right? So he'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. So, okay, here, and now I'm going to enter in just a little bit of a different narrative, okay? The other side of it is where we really need to focus our attention and where the mystery lies. And I call it a mystery because I know there's a lot of variables, but it truly is a mystery. So you've seen our AP numbers, and they are always in the top 3 in the state or so. I mean, they are very, very good. PSAT and SAT, our students never meet their full potential on this test. And we know that a test isn't perfect, but we also know that the SAT and PSAT measure skills, and we've just talked about how we're in the business of increasing those academic skills. So you can it's hard to see, so you can kind of take a look at this. Now, here's the thing. The state, they're not doing well overall on this test. I don't know if you saw that recent article that was out. So honestly, state-wise, we still look like we're doing okay, but we know we're not. We know that our students are capable of so much more. So you can kind of see I put up there, we're above the state by 120 points when you look at the total benchmark for the English and the math and so forth, 57 points above the state total for reading and writing and 66 points above state total for math. However, when I go to the next slide, you'll see why that's still troublesome. Okay, we'll get past that. Okay, so when you look at it, in English, we have stayed steady. That we've been kind of in that 75% meeting the benchmark of our students. And this is specifically looking at juniors, but it's not all that different when you look at the other grade levels leading up. This is SAT, of course, PSAT is the practice that leads that. However, if you kind of take a look, you know, I don't like the fact that we have less of our students in our subgroup populations meeting that, so you can see that disproportionality that I mentioned there. But then also, I know that we can, 75%, we have more students when we talk to colleges and when we look in the workplace, they say, wow, Westfield's truly prepared them, right? And this benchmark is supposed to predict that they will be able to have a C or higher average through their freshman year of college. We know that are more kids than 75%, and then when I transition to this slide, 47% meeting in math. And I know that we have far more students that are truly prepared when they go out into the workplace, when they go into college. So we need to kind of figure out what's going on here. Where is the disconnect? You know, and we have some predictions, and we have we've had a little bit of success. So we targeted a group of students, 150 students who were approaching the benchmark in both English and math this past year. They were really close, and we said, hey, part of our problem is we're always trying to, those that are not meeting the benchmark, we try to go to the bottom, or those that are the least close. I said, why don't we just try to help instill confidence and do some specific practice in the skills with those that are the closest? And we only really had a month with them during core. However, 1/3 of them went ahead and passed both benchmarks, and they had not met that before. And so we're going to start some of that earlier. So let me show you a couple of our things. So I already mentioned the first part, but our response is that we are really, really working with our math and our English teachers. We know they don't bear the burden all on themselves. I mean, that's one of the pieces. It's too easily said, oh, that's English, that's math. We know that these skills, like I said, need to be embedded in every classroom. But we're going to work with them specifically to take a look at the curriculum and instruction and just how we can do a better job emphasizing the skills. And then also, a few years ago, colleges decided that the test wasn't important, and a lot of them threw it out. And because of that, there started to be that narrative like, oh, this doesn't matter, right? And so the test administration itself, not only has it changed from paper pencil to electronic, so it's that format that we're getting used to, but then we need to change the narrative on the importance. And so we're going to continue to offer some staff training throughout, and then also really work on giving staff resources to incorporate SAT-style questions regardless of their content area. So students have that familiarity. And then doing more with CORE that we did on a small scale this year. So all of that kind of transitions to, we're going to talk now, that kind of lets you know our focus point, but kind of not really, I shouldn't say undermining, but another piece that we need to really be thinking about is the new diploma. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about an ICC partnership. So there's a new bill that was effective July 1st that we need to have a partnership with a college and so forth. So we've been looking all year. We've been meeting with those teams, and so we want to talk through our process and then what we've decided. And then we'll kind of end with how this ICC partnership actually correlates to and prepares us for potential changes the new diploma will bring.
Alicia, can I add one thing to your presentation on
Yes.
on the reason? So one of the things that members of the board that Alicia has not shared that I think is going to be a huge part, and she's taken a lot of the burden on the high school staff and her team, and I think that's noble of her, but I also want to make sure that this is a K-8 problem as much as it is a high school problem. And what I mean by that is we have to send students to their freshman year in the best shape that they possibly can. And so when Dr. Kaiser talks about that vertical articulation, that's what we're really talking about, that transition from 8 to 9. So our reveal that we adopted last year for math K through 8, we really should start to see that alignment over time that should then bring our kids into that next level 100% prepared. And then secondly, just one thing about this too, some action research. One of the things I do sometimes every now and then is go back and look at the district that I used to be at. And I will tell you that we are outperforming. We know that district has a history of doing very well on some of the iLearn and so forth. Their SAT results are lower than ours. They're at about 19th in the state, which is still very good, but I asked them and called them with that very question, and their answer was, we don't understand why we're having that same concern. So this is a concern that other districts, I think, have not figured out, just to share.
Parents used to send their kids to take practice or a service out there to get better at taking the SAT. Wasn't there something like that when I was a kid? So that, do parents no longer do that?
But there are still,
Things out there?
yeah, agencies out there that,
Used to be not everyone took it, and now that it's become,
Everyone's required to take it.
Right.
Now you can
and
actually
it's
track
become the
data.
state measurement tool, it's just different. It's not apples to apples anymore.
and,
Okay.
and some colleges are still test optional. Some are now requiring the SAT or ACT,
Yeah,
so
they're-
it really varies.
Yeah, there's some interesting data out there on when, for schools, especially some of the more elite schools who got rid of the test. And what happened was they actually accepted fewer diverse students because without that mark, they didn't do it intentionally, but there was a bias there that didn't tell them, oh my gosh, between Bill and I have this data point. Bill actually has potential. I'm going to take a chance on him. So they actually became more conservative with kiddos. And so that's why you're going to see it come back. I would also offer on the growth mindset piece, trying things, when it is required, I'm I now have had 5 kids do this. For example, Purdue super scores it, and sometimes scholarships are based on that. So if a kiddo knows I can do better in math, they retake it and they really focus on math because they don't think they can get their verbal any higher. Well, in the last couple of years, no one was retaking it because that's good enough, right? I mean, to be fair.
True.
And so now that we can kick it back in and have this mindset. Last thing, if Stacy Swan was here tonight, and again, it's noble of Alicia, Stacy Swan has the same goal. And so what she's going to, and she has said, we're going to see movement on our SAT at the high school because Westfield Middle School is going to help. And so she's going to share that data with her teachers and say, we need to do a better job. We need a different schedule. We need kids having more time in math and English and focus and break down into skills so that our kids are prepared and the high school teachers can build off of those skills when they come to them. So that alignment piece is going to help us as well.
All right, I'm going to
and
share a little-
finally, the Reveal adoption will only continue to help us better. Sorry, Matt.
It's all good. So I'm going to expand a little bit more on the Indiana College Core, just to kind of give you guys a little bit more background on it and so forth. As Alicia said, it is state law as of July 1st. All high schools within the next 2 years have to adopt a university partner. We, as a high school, had really started the process and researching what the ICC was, what the different universities were that were available, and we'll talk a little bit about that process. So the Indiana College Core is made up of essentially 30 credit hours of foundational educational credits that are transferable to state public universities and some private universities in the state of Indiana. What's interesting is this little pie chart over there on the right. There are 6 competency areas: written communication, speaking and listening, quantitative reasoning, scientific and social behavior, humanistic, and artistic. They have to have a minimum of 3 credits in each one of those competencies, but they can gain more credits in different areas, but it has to add up to 30 total credit hours, okay? So when you start thinking about it, it's not one puzzle that you put together. It could be multiple different ways you could come up with these 30 credit hours. Yeah. Yeah, so the 2024 legislation it's mandated now. It was developed in 2012. So the state legislature in 2012 came up with the concept of the Indiana College Core, but it was never mandated. It was, schools could adopt it, bring it on as necessary, but it now is state law. All right, so as I mentioned, it's a minimum of 3 credit hours per competency area. What is unique, though, 15 credit hours of the total 30, so half of them, have to come from one institution, okay? So that's where selecting a university to fit kind of Westfield and the opportunities we like to offer our students, it makes it kind of unique. So we have to really do our homework and research to find out which partner would be a good fit for us. A minimum of GPA of 2.0. What's nice is with the Indiana College Core, those AP credits that Alicia mentioned earlier that our students are very successful on, that can be part of that 30. So, for example, a student could take ACP classes at the high school and take, 3 or 4 of those. Those can count. They could take 3 or 4 or 5 AP classes. Those would count. So it really is a combination of dual credit, AP, ACP, and dual credit classes. So what's the whole, why Indiana College Core? What are the advantages for the students? Obviously, the big one is it allows students to get ahead. So a head start on the day after graduating from Westfield High School. So they can actually start those college classes a little bit sooner. It allows them to have more flexibility and be able to explore different areas when they get to college. So if they want a double major or they want to have multiple minors, it provides that flexibility because they've already taken a lot of those general ed classes out of the way. And obviously there it saves time and money in the long run as well for the parents. Whoops. So there is some data. The Indiana Commission of Higher Ed has released some data already about over the last 10-plus years that they've had the Indiana ICC. 90% of students who earn the Indiana ICC went on and attend college, so that's encouraging. So they have that confidence. They feel that they can be successful after they graduate from Westfield High School. They can handle what's coming at them at the college level. 70% have also met the benchmarks for being successful and ready to handle the college and demonstrated. So they don't need remedial classes, remedial math and things like that. Sometimes students need that with that transition. Now, there are benefits for the school corporation. So for every dual credit that the students earn, the district would earn $40 per credit. So a 3-credit class could be an additional $120 for the district per student that takes each one of those classes, with a maximum of $1,200 per student. There also is an incentive as well for $1,500 per student who successfully complete the ICC by the time they graduate. So there is ways to offset some of the costs that could be associated with students taking a dual credit class or an AP class to make up for these. And like I said, it can include dual credit, ACP classes, AP classes. There are some other programs like IB, International Baccalaureate, which we don't offer, but there are some other avenues as well. So let's talk a little bit about the team. When we started the research in the fall last year, we had all the counselors involved, Alicia, myself, another one of the assistant principals, and we had 2 administrators from the central office as well. We went out and asked for all the colleges and universities that offer the ICC in the state of Indiana to come present to us at Westfield High School. They all presented how the ICC works within their schools. We had Ball State, Ivy Tech, Vincennes University, Indiana University, were the 4 that currently are the big 4 providers in the state. Purdue currently is not an ICC provider. They could be in the future, but they're not currently. But each of the schools provided an overview of how the classes we offer in AP, the classes we offer in ACP, how those classes currently would fit into accomplishing the ICC. And that kind of leads us to who we highly recommend using for the ICC, and I'll turn it back over to Alicia to explain the why.
Okay, so as you can see, there it is. Ball State is who we selected for various reasons. First, I will say that we really took it to heart. We asked a lot of questions of each of the schools. And we also really analyzed what we currently offer in our course book in terms of AP, what we offer, what would it look like for our dual credit, knowing that much of our dual credit is already associated with IU, that was a big piece of it, and that, but we came up for this reason. Actually, the number one reason, okay, here we go. So the number one reason is as he mentioned, there's a variety of categories in which you have to have courses, so that there's different categories. One of the categories is called humanistic and artistic ways of knowing. So that's one of the competencies. So it really came down to, we felt like IU and Ball State were probably more the type of school, since we know over 86% of our students pursue a 4-year college. That was probably already a direction that we thought we would pursue in thinking about what our community, what might like as well. However, IU only offers one possible course that students can have in the humanistic and artistic ways of knowing competency. And music theory, which we offer, okay? However, really we only have about up to 15 students take that a year. So we said, how are our students actually going to meet that, right? However, at Ball State, there were a whole list of courses that would qualify, including world language courses. And as we talk about the new diploma, even in just maybe some of how there's a little bit of a lack of emphasis in world language in terms of new diploma, we really value global competency, at Westfield and do that. So this is a way that we can explore kind of the value of that and partner with utilizing the ICC. So That said, there were expanded dual, and there's also, they offer a whole list, I should say catalog, right, Lindsay, of online courses. So if we weren't able to offer it in-house, because you do have to have a teacher who meets those requirements, so they have to have a master's in the content area, typically, then we would be able to give our students access to some of those online classes taught by their professors. So there were more opportunities for students to have access to the courses. They also shared some great opportunities for our teachers to have some professional development and training. They seemed really ready to work with us as we look to have more of our teachers meet the qualifications to be dual credit certified. So we were really impressed with that. And then like I said, we asked them to come back, and they actually met with us twice because we were kind of finalizing, hey, we think we want to go with you, and then we had this whole list of questions, and just their willingness to work with us. So those were the main reasons that Ball State really stood out to us. I can pause here as you're taking a lot in. Yes.
Yeah, so if you go back to the other slide, so were there only 4 universities that you all could choose from that, like for the entire state, or is that the only 4 that could do this?
Yeah, so no, there were several. We were looking at ones that are in which our students go to. So that's where we kind of narrowed it down. Like IU Bloomington was a big one, but also IU Kokomo offers it, and IU, I can't remember what the other IU one is. But they offer it. The weird thing is everything's a little different depending on what campus you go to. But Purdue Lafayette, which is one that we were hoping for, does not offer it. Because between Purdue, Ball State, and IU, that's where our kids are most of them.
So, I just don't know how this actually works, so just dumb it down for me. If our kiddos are gonna now take the courses from Ball State, but they don't go to Ball State, do they need to transfer
Yes.
to other universities except obviously Purdue? Right? They're not part
No,
of
they'll
that.
actually transfer to
As just a, just a credit or an actual
It will
class to
count
class?
for, so if, say, the humanistic and artistic ways, it will transfer in under those competencies into Purdue.
So that it would be the foundational courses. So you help get those out of the way.
That you would take your freshman year, just.
Yes.
How are
And
they taking the courses? Is it online, or is this being taught in the high school?
Westfield teachers. So we have a number of our teachers who will already meet the qualifications. We already have so many dual credit opportunities. So what we'll have to decide is, will we shift our teachers who right now are teaching, are ACP certified through IU, because we offer a number of ACP classes. We have an option. We can keep those, and that can be a part of the 15 that don't have to be from Ball State. Or we're going to look into, do we shift those to dual credit ACP through Ball State? What they've told us is it will simply be the teachers filling out that application, but the requirements needed for both will be pretty much reciprocal.
So when you said the 12 hours of the 30, that's not the students' hours, that's how we divvy up the classes?
So
15 have to come from one institution, so that would be 5 classes. So 15, so 5 classes are from Ball State, and then the other 5 can be AP, other dual credit, ACP.
So we're still gonna play with Ivy Tech?
Yeah, Ivy Tech could be part of that other.
could be a
So-
part of the other 15.
Yeah, let's
So
just
when
talk
you-
about what ACP is. Tell them what, when you mentioned
advanced
ACP.
college.
Advanced college placement is what that is it's basically taught by our teachers, but they're certified through IU. And it's a course, they're teaching the course that the students would have at IU, however, they're having it in their junior or senior year.
Those are 100% transferable to,
100%.
That's
Not
good.
only to IU, though, they will transfer to other institutions as well. So that's like our ACP comp, our ACP speech.
And many students
Lit.
who lean towards IU Bloomington like to take those courses.
Right.
Right? I mean, so that's the thing, why keeping that partnership is something we really have to look into.
We'll explore.
Yeah.
What, I'm assuming this is the diploma requirement that everybody is, has an opinion on and is sharing online, thank you. Knowing that this has been in place since 2012 is helpful context. What is upsetting parents and educators?
So this isn't really the new diploma. This is that part, it's different, but what you'll see is there's a piece of the new diploma where if students attain this, it will count for that diploma plus. So by pursuing this, it can meet one of the requirements for an advanced diploma under the new diploma, if that's as clear as mud.
And this,
I'm gonna be honest, no.
Okay.
for students starting when? Like this, so, okay, I'm always comparing it to my kids. So Gabe's a junior. This doesn't count for anything.
And this is not, it will never be a requirement. The requirement is that we offer it to students. But students do not have to pursue the ICC in order to graduate or to receive their diploma. This will still be.
New diploma is this current 8th grade class going into be freshman. It will be the first one that it will impact, correct?
Yes.
Sorry, can we go back to the confusing? So this is not a new diploma. It's been here since 2012, but it's required.
This isn't the diploma I'm about to I messed you up because I mentioned the new diploma too early. Now we're going to go into the new diploma.
I do want to, is it fair to say, when Matt had the slides up of the three things,
Yes, please.
the get ahead, the reason why anytime we gravitate towards a more rigorous curriculum and experience for kids is we know, again, that productive struggle helps them perform better no matter what, right? So the whole reason we went to APs, I would argue that we focus on the get ahead. The legislators focus on save time and money at the university level. So they're mandating it, that we offer it because they believe it can help save time and money, especially maybe with 21st century scholars who, if they go this way, are only going to get their money for 3 years, right? I mean, there's...
Well, and wanting more people to go to college, to continue to
Right.
pursue that
Right.
4-year, which they believe if a student were to earn the Indiana College Core, they're more likely, as the stats showed. But don't look at that handout quite yet.
But what I want to say is, we always say to parents, this kind of message, we don't say it the exact way, is we want to push your kids to the most rigorous curriculum they can handle. That's why we're trying to increase access, because it will only help kids. One of the benefits down the road, so it'll help them be more prepared, one of the benefits is it might save you money. It might, but we're not doing it because it saves you money. We're doing it because it's good for your kid and helping them learn, grow, and be prepared to chase whatever they want to chase after high school. But there are some other benefits we share with you.
Well, in full transparency, you brought up that it was there since 2012. We never decided, yes, we want this. We started talking about it, but partly because the why is that preparation, right? Is giving students that chance for rigor and preparation. And we felt like with our robust AP and ACP offerings, we didn't necessarily need the Indiana College Core to meet that. Now that it's mandated, we have decided, well, we're not against it. We're going to fully embrace it. And then the carrot on top a little bit, we're excited about working with Ball State, but then the carrot on top is that there is a connection to what is coming out in terms of the new diploma proposal. So that's how they're connected, as confusing as that is. So you have that handout in front of you. I will say this is a draft. The final version has not been released yet. However, this is where you can see that they have broken down the new diploma into different strands in different competencies and checkpoints that students must meet in those different categories. So in the area of academic mastery, career and post-secondary, also in, this is where I'm having trouble reading, thank you. Communication, collaboration, work ethic, and civic, financial, and digital literacy. Here's the good news. We've already been on this mission for a long time. These are skills that we've been working toward on our Life Ready mission. Now we're just going to need to track them. Okay, so we're just going to need to support, our counselors and be able to track that students have these content skills as well as these post-secondary, these work experiences. And so in this iteration, everybody will have all of the components of the top. And then they get, so really what they say is in your freshman and sophomore year, you're kind of checking off these boxes. And then you have some flex in your junior and senior year to meet 40 of the Flex 40 in different areas of your interest. And you can see that, AP classes are there, the SAT, ACT is there, experiences to be a part of JROTC, and that coursework, here's where you see our fine arts, our creative arts, our world language. So we're still placing value in those courses as they earn this new diploma. And then the academic honors diploma, the title, the name, will go away, okay, at that point. I know, this is, and so forth. Instead, it's kind of a combination of this and then meeting the requirements to meet an Indiana GPS Plus diploma. And if you look at the component 3 on the far right, you'll see that ICC right there. So as one of the ways to meet that requirement toward the plus diploma, that's one of the ways that you can do so. And so that's where that partnership does come in, and we're saying we're going to fully embrace this as a way, because many of our students, we know because many of them go for academic honors, many are going to want to meet that GPS plus, that diploma plus requirement. Now, one thing I will say here, we have already talked about this extensively, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate our district team and our support of our central office leaders. What we've talked about is we know we still need to prepare our students for the day after graduation. The Life Ready mission vision has not changed. And many colleges are saying, hey, this is great, but you're missing some requirements that they're going to need in order to be accepted at our university. The new diploma doesn't fully prepare them for what some of our colleges are asking for. So what we're going to do is when the final version comes out, we are going to take a look at this, but we are going to have a Westfield version, okay? And we will get support from stakeholders, feedback from stakeholders, staff, students, parents, everybody involved, where we decide, okay, what do they need to be prepared for that track toward four-year college? What do they need to be prepared for directly into the workforce, for the military? And we'll get a chance to kind of put our Westfield brand on it as we do that. So I wanted you to just kind of see an overview. We don't have all the answers yet. Our next steps are to fully pursue the ICC partnership that we talked about. And then we need to talk more about now the academic honors is going away, and that really we know is a diploma that prepares students for the four-year college. What does our version look like? We need to get more teachers certified to teach dual credit now that we're going to have the Indiana College Core partnership. We need to keep refining our local pathways. We added about 5 local pathways last school year to give more students a chance to graduate via the pathways. And so not just the CTE pathways, but others in the arts, in civics, in world language, and so forth. We are going to need to increase our community and work-based partnerships because a big piece of this is work-based internships. Big piece. So thankfully, we have doubled the number of students in 1 year's time that have internships out in our community, and we're continuing to foster and grow those partnerships. We'll need to take it to even another level. And then we're going to come together with a committee of stakeholders that puts together our proposal of graduation requirements that we'll present to you and allow people to have some feedback and to ask questions as we're shaping those. We'll also continue to get the input and communicate with AST throughout the year. Yeah.
Alicia, the work-based internships, is that something that, for them, that takes place during the school day?
It doesn't have to.
Okay.
So a lot of times it does kind of, they'll take like a fourth or fifth period co-op or an internship or a first period, but it can also be something, from what we've asked in terms of the discussion boards that have been here, is there can be summer internships as well and different opportunities, because that will be the toughest thing, as many of our athletes, our student athletes and those that are involved heavily in academics, finding those windows of time. But we have shared a lot of feedback about how you really need flexibility about when those work-based internships take place and what they look like, some in school, some out of school, in different times throughout the year.
And did I hear you right? You were saying this diploma doesn't, you're saying the universities are saying there are gaps and that it doesn't prepare them?
Correct. Because there's so much choice here, so a student wouldn't have to, for example, many colleges will still say they need 2 years of world language for admittance. World language is just one of the options in the Flex 40. So depending on what students select, different universities they might want to go to will have varying requirements.
And that's, the high school counselors need to know, like, so for example, Notre Dame requires physics. I think
Yes.
IU requires probability and statistics, or, so there's certain math classes that, so if you tell your counselor, here's where I want to apply, they've, in our current setting, we've guided them certain ways to make sure all those boxes are checked. When you provide more flexibility and reduce the numbers, and you haven't received feedback from the universities, right? If we're not checking the boxes, it's not the universities or the legislators that are going to have to talk to parents. It's our counselors and our administrators who are going to have to talk to parents. And so there's a piece there. I want to go back to that component 3. That box, if you really look at it, we don't offer the Cambridge or IB diploma, and apprenticeships and credentials are still, that's not clear. So, and if you're thinking the GPS plus diploma is similar to the academic honors, you have 2 choices: an AP Scholar with distinction, which means I have to take 5 AP tests, score at least a 3 or higher, and an average of 3.5. That locks me into the AP route instead of the ACP, or get this Indiana College Core. And so that's why it's time to embrace that, to say, let's use that as an avenue. We think a lot of kids will use that,
Yes.
that are college bound, but it still has that flexibility of the 15 plus other classes, right? And so it doesn't make us change as much. And it still values some of the current courses and
does.
teachers we have in place that we want to continue to value. And they're a big part of our life ready, preparing kids. And so we don't want to create a sense of nervousness or anxiousness with this change that so our goal is to make this change, to Westville'ize it, as opposed to throw out what we currently have.
We don't want to change our values or our mission. We want to figure out how that correlates to and we can embed within, the new diploma, while still offering lots of opportunities and paths to our students that will prepare them.
Can I ask one other silly question? So the ACP and AP take different tests?
So the ACP is actually, you are enrolled in a college course. So as long as you receive a C or higher, you receive that credit
Without having to take?
without taking a test. With the AP, it all is based on getting a 3 or higher on that AP exam at the end of the course.
And again, our teachers teach the APC, they go to training, they're certified through IU, that's been around for a long, long time. And again, probably a good way to look at this, we've been doing a lot of this stuff. Now we're just kind of bundling it.
Bundling, I like how you said that.
And now we're gonna work with Ball State, but we're still gonna work with IU. We'll still,
Yes.
if Purdue has a dual credit course or.
We'll still work
you know,
with Ivy Tech. I think we have,
One,
So there's still a lot of
there's a social
opportunities.
studies one should be, I don't think we see.
You know,
social
if our kids wanna take a class through Purdue Global,
We
they
didn't
could.
make this. The
And that could
Principals
also add to
Association
this.
made it. So we'll clean it up, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, Actually came from the state with the principals.
I appreciate you making it the Westfield way.
Yes.
Westville's it. It's not making it up, man.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and shift gears here. Yeah. We're gonna start talking about the program review that we had. When I was in my previous position, what we talked about doing is doing a program review very similar to like your textbook adoption, right? Every 6 years, you relook at how's English going, what are the pros, cons, and then adopt a textbook to go with it. So we talked about doing this with different programs that we have around the district. We started this year with special education and EL, so they'll get up and talk about it a little bit, but I want to give you a brief, I don't know if I'm going to go the right way, nope. A brief overview of our process that we did with the program review. So what we started is we had 5 meeting dates with each group. The first group, we really looked at just kind of understanding our current program. We had everybody in the room. We went through and we did a quick explanation of the process, we came up with some collective commitments. And then we really started to kind of review the program that we had. We did a SWOT analysis. So we looked at their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats as well. The next time we came together, we explored data sets, and Carmen joined us for that, and she supplied us with pretty much every piece of data that you could ever want. It was very overwhelming, but it was a ton of really, really good information. So she did that with us, and then we really kind of sat down and looked at the data, saw where we were doing well, and then the areas that we needed to improve. And this is with both groups that we did this with. We came back, and then we started looking at some research. So we said, okay, here's our data. Let's look at the research as to what research says is important in each of these programs. And we identified some best practices and then kind of finished out our SWOT analysis that we did. Then we came back together and we set some goals and some action steps. And when we were doing goals, these are big goals. So these are 6 years from now. What is our goal for this program and what are our action steps to get there? And so they'll talk about those goals tonight. And then our program recommendations, which is kind of where do we go from here and what does this look like? So that was a pretty much a year-long process with the group. We met 5 times and mostly in this room and really kind of dove deep into it. And we were very fortunate that our teachers and everybody on board was really devoted to this. And while it was a lot of hard work, it was really impressive them coming together and thinking about what their plan looks like for the next 6 years. So I'm going to turn it over. Who's next? There you go. To the special education program one.
Okay, one of the first things, I know when Dr. Kaiser came to us and talked to us about this, was special education. I'm sure most of you are aware, we serve students age 3 through age 22, depending on eligibility. So we're really thinking about committee work and making sure we really had a full representation of perspective from our staff. And we're thinking about just not teaching and learning. We're thinking about our itinerant staff. We're thinking about therapists, school psychologists, early childhood, and that full range of services all the way from preschool all the way to age 22 with our Shamrock Connection. So one of our tasks really was, let's make sure we do this the right way, but also we're working within the school year and really thinking about our committee. So we did have ended up with great representation. We really looked at our pre-K through 4 with our resource staff. We had a committee that was meeting with Lindsay and I. Carla Budarak. We also had an administrative team that was assigned to each one of these. We had grades 5 through 12 represented for resource. And then we had our special programs and therapists, school psychologists, and other itinerant staff that were assigned to that third committee that was meeting, really to get our staff's perspective about special education services, some of our strengths, opportunities to improve and get better. So that was really, in part, was getting this off the ground, how we could get all those groups together, how we could really share ideas and work together to understand, hey, what are we doing really, really well? And then what areas do we really want to look at so that we can continue to improve. One fun fact I'm just going to share, I have to share. It's my 20th year in Westfield this year. So I had my first preschooler that we qualified at age 3 that just got through Shamrock Connections age 22, so that was kind of cool. So I had to share that because that's just kind of a journey that I hope everybody gets to experience. But one of the really cool things about this job is you get to see those kiddos turn 3 all the way through age 22. So we did that for the first time this year, at least in my tenure. So that's pretty exciting. So, but the next thing I wanted to, Carla, if you don't know Carla Budarak, she's our Assistant Director of Special Education, Pre-K through 4. She's going to share some of the celebrations that our teachers, therapists, and other itinerant staff shared throughout the process.
So when we went through this process, we were excited about it, and we were going into it with an open mind, and what we found were lots of celebrations. We found that we were on the right track in many areas. We found that we were student-centered, which is a good thing. We do things well with our therapies. We're pushing into classrooms, supporting students. We are growing our teachers with the PLC process. They're learning all kinds of things about their area of practice. We are reaching out to parents. We have activities and programs through like the CPAC, Parent Advisory Council. We are including our kids in many of the activities that are going on in our general education classrooms. And we found that we also have some outstanding resources and interventions that we're using with our kids that are really growing. So we're really excited about what we've done, but as Dr. Atha said, great, but let's get better. Too bad, let's get better. So we've come up with some, I think, really good and comprehensive goals that Dr. Stinson is going to share with us.
So the goals, I think Lindsay kind of mentioned this kind of 6-year review, 6-year process. Obviously, I'm transitioning to a new position and handing the baton to Lindsay. I'm super excited about that we talked a little bit, hey, we're just going to be right around the corner from each other so we can kind of continue this path. But one of the things that we really talked about was kind of the 6-year pathway. There was 2 real critical areas that our committees felt like were our most optimal opportunity to continue to grow. Certainly not things that we're not doing, but certainly things we want to focus on and continue to really think about our kiddos from age 3 to 22. Really thinking about vertical alignment. We get kids at age 3, and a lot of our kids with more significant needs, with greater needs that maybe aren't, and we just got done talking to Alicia about pathways that are taking maybe a different pathway that's not a traditional diploma pathway all the way to age 22. So one of the things that we really talked about is how can we best align that transition piece, that alignment piece, that programming and curriculum piece from a child that's 3 years old at our early childhood and our early learning center all the way through graduation or through our 18 to 22-year-old program, and thinking about what their interests are, what their strengths are from an early age all the way to age 22, and thinking about what they want to do, what are their interests and strengths, and how we're going to get there through different mechanisms, thinking about curriculum, thinking about how we're writing individualized education plans, how we're writing individualized goals for students, really thinking about how we place kids, how we consider eligibility, how we think about collecting data, whether that's academic, social, emotional, whatever it might be from a behavioral standpoint, how we're onboarding staff. If you think about an early childhood teacher versus a resource teacher at the high school, certainly much different, or an occupational therapist. How are we supporting them professionally to really help them grow? It's what John talked about. We hired the best, but we want to help them get better. In special education, it's not first grade teacher, next door there's another first grade teacher. We've got quite a range of staff and professionals that really have a lot of areas of different expertise, and we're starting to think about how do we really formally onboard them so that we're giving them the support they need to help our students grow. And then just thinking about behavioral supports. I think we've heard that in our systems to systems meetings. our building meetings, our administrative teams at our buildings talking about how can we really change that piece so that students that are experiencing, significant behavioral barriers, so that we can extinguish that so that they can learn. The negative behaviors aren't the primary barrier to learning for a lot of kids, and we are seeing that more and more. So we're starting to integrate a lot of that and how we can better support classroom teachers, special education teachers, our instructional assistants, our principals in our buildings. The second piece that we wanted to look at was just that that delivery model. We've got lots of different special programs, but how we're supporting special programs. But the big piece that really came out of that was that Tier 1 piece, how we're supporting Tier 1. And what is our Tier 1? And is our Tier 1 is instruction and curriculum as strong as we want it to be? And how can we support that so that we can get the greatest growth opportunity for our students? And what we really came out of that was that co-teaching piece. And I think even our own committee members didn't really know what co-teaching was. What is co-teaching when you're thinking about a general education teacher and a special education teacher in the same space delivering the same instruction? And what does that look like? It's not just a second teacher in the room supporting a few kids in the back or in the front or on every corner of the classroom, depending on how we're serving students with IEPs. It's about a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher supporting all kids and all learners, and including best instructional practices across the board. That's really what came out of that. It sounds super simple. It's not. I mean, co-teaching is a massive, massive initiative that we're going to be looking at over the course of the next 6 years. And I certainly know Alicia and some of our other principals have already taken that lead, but really thinking about how we can do that in a super meaningful way with shared planning between departments. K-4, it's probably, I don't want to say it's simpler, but when you start to get into that departmentalized curriculum, when you have that social studies teacher, that English teacher that have those areas of expertise, and you start looking at that secondary model, typically that's a little more challenging. Because me as a special education teacher, I'm not a history expert or I'm not an English expert. So how does that co-planning, what's that look like, and how can we share that in a way that we can really be delivering the same instruction as two professionals in the same way for kids? So that was really the second piece that we're going to be looking at. I told Lindsay, I said, well, we got to year 1, so year 2 through 6 is on her. But we're here to support her, so she's going to be working on that with these committees, which is ongoing. We're going to continue to work on the rest of that through the course of the year. But it was a great experience. I've been here 20 years, and I don't think we've taken this deep of a dive. We've looked at programs individually, but holistically, it's been a great experience to get our whole staff, pre-K through 12, in the same room together multiple times in the course of the year was really, really rewarding. So we appreciated it. Any questions?
Chase, before you go on, and Lindsay, you're obviously part of this with now more so than ever in what we've done. Talk just a little bit about the Shamrock Connections and how the new facility and how that really ties into pathways and that 18 to 22. That's an important part that, our facility's not where we want it. We've got some really strong leadership now in that program. So can you guys just, between the three of you, talk a little bit about that to update the board on, the purpose and, what those kids do and then how it's going to incorporate to the new facility.
Well, Shamrock Connections is as I referenced earlier, a program for our students that are 18 to 22 that aren't on a traditional diploma pathway. There is an alternate diploma pathway now to add to our confusion earlier, along with our certificate of completion. So it's typically students that have a level of that are eligible for special education services that might have an intellectual disability of some kind that aren't graduating with their cohort, that are staying through their 22nd birthday. And what we're really focusing on is that independent living mixed with community, mixed with vocational, so that when they program complete the Shamrock Connections, they're connected to vocational, they're connected to adult services, they're connected to their family, and we're working side by side with their family to ensure that they're ready to transition into our community in the most meaningful way possible. Dr. Kaiser referenced facility. We do have a plan for a new facility that'll open next year, next August is the hope, fingers crossed, within the new, within the old library. So we'll be certainly part of that. Shamrock Connections is gonna be part of that, so a lot of our community partners that we already have will be part of that, but we're gonna use the new facility to hopefully build those skills for kids, vocationally speaking, with our partners, and then pushing into the community so that they're really getting those job and vocational experiences before they transition to adult services. So I don't know if there was anything about the facility else that you wanted to reference, but we're super excited to have that new facility. I don't know if you know where we are now, but it's gonna be a huge upgrade. But a lot of our time is spent in the community, so it's not like we don't wanna focus on that space necessarily. I mean, we're certainly appreciative of the new space, but a lot of our time is spent in the community now with our community partners, so we don't try to get too hung up on.
Chase, I want to add, 3 years ago when I first got here and we started doing our system meeting and individual community meetings, I had a parent of a student who was finishing up there, and she met with me and obviously talked about the facility and the trailer, and that was, our goal was to have it at the new hospital, and that didn't work out. From that point on, we knew we needed to do something, and she really emphasized how important it was to have that centrally located in kind of the center of Westville, for our kids to be able to leave that program and go to work. And, you know, some of the kids can leave there and walk downtown and work, and obviously working for the school. So not, the location of that program is an important thing, and also the skill set that we're gonna be able to develop with the mini kitchen and laundry facilities. It's really gonna prepare those kids for that day after. I know they've graduated, but really, you know, jumping into that workforce.
The original program was Project Search at St. Vincent's, but it's a national program that was, Project Search would require the child to program complete, withdraw from school, and it was a 1-year program, and then you had to automatically advance into the community, into adult services. And what we were recognizing was certainly, why does it have to be 1 year? I mean, these kids, they can stay with us until age 22. So we started Project Search, knowing that we could have them through their 22nd birthday, they didn't have to withdraw from school, and we started our own program. We were appreciative of the opportunity to work with them, but we thought we can make this a lot better. So that was part of the thought behind it, along with the idea that we don't have to be limited to the space of a hospital. The reason Project Search kind of transformed was because there's lots of opportunities, vocationally speaking, within a hospital setting. There's lots of jobs, it can be supervised under the same roof, and we can give kids lots of different experiences. And that was the original intent behind St. Vincent's. We can still have that, and we can still also be part of the community, and there's lots of vocational opportunities within our community. So we've certainly expanded it. We've made it a multi-year program for kids. They're in our community, they're in different jobs within our community, and I know it's going to be a great opportunity to really help build those base skills for them within the new facility as well. It's going to be a huge opportunity, so certainly. Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much, I appreciate it.
As we transition, fun fact, 1995, Michelle Foster just retired from Westfield Washington Schools. First year block schedule at Noblesville High School. She and I co-taught 2 Algebra 1 classes. One had 31 students, 12 with IEPs, and the other one had 33, 15 with IEPs. And so she taught me how to co-teach. I was the kind of content specialist. She was the strategy specialist. It was amazing. I learned so much from her. She's way older than me. That's why she retired this year.
So moving into the EL program review. So before I go on, I haven't had the privilege of actually getting to sort of speak in front of you before. So one thing, language matters. So EL, my title is the EL coordinator. EL refers to English learner, and that's going to be in all your policy, right? So if I'm writing grants, if I'm doing compliance for ILPs, that's what EL means, right? So that's that EL service. However, I know one person in here who can raise their hand. Who here can speak another language fluently? Don't raise your hand. Yeah. So multilingual is how we refer to our students. And one of the reasons we do that is, as you can see, we have one person in here who is fluent, and language is a superpower. And so one of the reasons we say multilingual students is because they are assets to our community, they are assets to our classroom. And so it really makes this more inclusive because so often and prior, I mean, even 10 years ago, you probably heard ESL, ELL, ELL, all of those. It was a lot of times under the umbrella of student services, and so it was looked at as language was a disability. Language is not a disability. Language is a superpower. So, all right, so evolution of EL, for those of you who might not know. Looking at 2010, we had 254 EL students. So multilingual students receiving EL services. That is 3.89%. As we've grown in 2015, there was only 5 students with receiving EL services. And with our other population, it was 3.27. Prior to the 2021-2022 school year, EL services were under student services, so they were under Dr. Stinson, all under that umbrella. Since then, this is me, in 2022-2023, Westfield Washington Schools shifted roles and placed EL services as a standalone department under curriculum, instruction, and learning. That's me. So I've been in this role now I just finished my 2nd year. So Indiana EL data. I think you guys need to understand this before we understand sort of what we're working with. So 139,000 students reported with a language other than English in the 2022 to 2023 school year. 83 of those students were receiving EL services. 66.2 increase in EL students populations since 2016 to 2017 in the state of Indiana. 295 languages are reported in Indiana schools. That's over 6% of Indiana students are receiving EL services. Just take that in, right? Okay, now look at Westfield. So Westfield EL population last year alone, from the beginning of the school year to the end, I just pulled the report in July, we had a 21.4% growth rate. Okay, that's compared to 18% growth rate that we had last year. So this growth rate right here, that's from last year. We grew that much. And these are our numbers from the beginning to the end of the school year, and that's our growth rate. And that kind of breaks it down per school. That's big. So we currently sit at 8.16% of our overall student population are multilingual students receiving EL services. That's up from 7% last year. And I can tell you from all of our enrollments, after we screen our students, there are probably going to be even more. We generally get multiple students at the beginning of the year. Our languages currently, we have 73 languages that are spoken in Westfield Washington schools alone, 4 languages compared to last year. And then our 5 top languages are Spanish, Arabic, Vietnamese, Russian, and Telugu. Okay? Questions so far? Jimmy, I could tell. It's a language from India, so it's a dialect from India. Yep.
How many different dialogues of India in our school?
Oh, a lot. Because there's a lot of different dialects. So like Punjabi is actually growing, but others, like in Carmel, I believe they have a higher Punjabi, students who speak Punjabi and families who speak Punjabi. So we kind of see an influx here and there. But yeah, so Telugu has been actually in there, I'd say, for probably the top, like, past 3 years maybe. So, other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, so if these students are they typically non-English speaking?
So when a student enrolls into Westfield schools or any Indiana school, they're going to take what's called the home language survey. The home language survey is going to prompt them to take 3 different questions. If they respond to any of those questions with anything other than English, it's going to be sort of marked, and it's a flag for us that we need to do what's called the WITA screener. The WITA screener is the language assessment that's given annually, but it screens them to indicate whether or not they're going to need services based on their score. If they receive services, they get pooled, and then they go to a teacher of record, they get an ILP, which is the individual learning plan, and then we figure out their services from there. If they, at that point, say maybe they had English in their home language, like they always spoke 2 languages, there's multilingual in the home, they would be called FNA, which is fluent not assessed. So they no longer have to be assessed.
Okay, but so let's say they're super intelligent, they just can't comprehend what you're saying in front of the room. Do we put them in the classroom and they have a translator going on in front of them? Like, is Google translating?
So if they're receiving services? Okay, so if they don't test into services, they are going to be in all the classes. But what I'm going to tell you right now is all of our students are in all of our classes, but we'll get to that. So maybe we'll get to that in a second. Okay. So the strengths. So during the program review, what people had to say was, wow, our growth is amazing. We have a lot of passionate people in this district who care a whole heck of a lot about our students, and they love the growth. Increase in our EL support systems. So we have grown as an EL program, and we've also grown in our support systems. And I also just want to give a huge shout out to the multilingual family liaisons. If you have not met Abnetis or Mariana, you're missing out. They are two of the most incredible humans you will ever meet. And they do amazing things. And then SIOP training. SIOP it's Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It's just it was a research-based validated model that was done back in the 90s to figure out how to serve students, diverse learners. And from that, they found that, hey, everyone benefits, but what they really found was multilingual students showed even more significant gains than any of their counterparts. So, focus areas, what we came up with from the program review. We knew that our goals were we wanted a newcomer resource adoption, we wanted to increase collaborative teaching, and we wanted to increase their professional learning opportunities through professional development, and they had marked SIOP. So, 6-year plan, newcomer resource adoption. So a newcomer student is sort of the umbrella term. It's any student who has arrived from another country and has come into the United States. They can come with other they can be an asylee, a refugee, SLIFE, which is a student with limited interrupted formal education. There are a bunch of different things that can qualify a student, but newcomer is they're brand new. So this newcomer resource adoption that we adopted was K-12, so we are finally aligned K-12 through our EL programming, and it will be through VISTA, and what this will do is any student who is new or is struggling in their language, they are going to have these services that is going to be specifically for WIDA ELD standards, so English Language Development Standards, and it'll help them so that we can make sure that language is not the reason that they're not successful in their classes. Collaborative teaching, as Chase said, is huge. I can say K-12, we are collaboratively teaching starting next year. So it is something that we've already kind of been working on, and we are going to be implementing that. The high school is already doing it, the middle school is doing it, so now we're really going to have that K-12. And then professional development. Again, we are offering multiple sort of SIOP institutes in-house, so we no longer have to pay an outside provider to provide this training. And then we also do school-based learning opportunities. For instance, there's a lot of work being done right now with the Westfield Intermediate School, so I just gave some examples. So, when we're talking about services, all students receive content-based instruction. So what that means is they're all in classrooms with their peers. However, newcomer would be a class for students who are struggling in the language or they're brand new to the country. That's a program where we would provide services specifically for English language development. Other than that, that English language development is we used to be a pull-out, we used to do pull-out practices. That research shows that's not best practice, and so we're pushing in, and so that's where collaborative teaching is happening in the classroom, and those EL teachers are receiving that, and our general education teachers are receiving professional development through providing best practice strategies. So.
Explain what SIOP is for the board.
What?
Explain what SIOP is for the board.
So SIOP is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. So 1994, I think, it was a research design, a research grant through this, I'm gonna mess it up, but it's CREED. And so they ended up figuring out, how do we support our diverse learners? And through that research, they found that, hey, through these practices, these best practice strategies and high yield strategies, these students, all the diverse learners were, if the teachers were implementing them, these students were seeing significant gains. But what was even more compelling was that our multilingual students were receiving even higher gains. So with these strategies, through scaffolding differentiation, these students were able to close the gap at a higher rate. So that's one of the reasons
in linguistics, one of the things that, new learning is just not stacked on top of old learning, right? It's connected to your lived experiences. So a lot of times kiddos who come to us from other countries, the language barrier is because they haven't lived in our country. So if you've come from a warm climate and we're talking about snow or winter coats, they have no context for that. Halloween, right?
Butterflies.
I could tell you, but anyway, so the bottom line is, it is best practice in language development for all students is what the research, we focused it on. So our hope is, as teachers learn SIOP, because they have to, because of the increase of our English language learners and our multilingual students, they also are going to become better teachers, period. And then through the PLC process where they're working collaboratively, if Bill's having a problem and maybe he hasn't been SIOP trained yet, I'm processing up and say, well, I went through SIOP. Here's what I would do if I were you, and share some of those strategies. He tries it. Guess what? He has success. He then changes, right? And he's more likely to try it if I say it to him than if John Atha walked over in his classroom and said, hey, you ought to try this, right? Because we have a relationship and we're working and we're on a team. So this is something that I think, again, when we talk about momentum, we're getting some great momentum. Crystal's been out in our schools doing PDs, and now schools are asking for more because they're seeing the success of our students, especially in language development skills, and then also in language learning skills.
And it's been a huge impact for the intermediate school. I've been really partnering with their teachers who are working with special ed, in special ed, just because they said they just needed to have a little shakeup because they had to rethink and reframe. And so again, best practice is best practice. So any other questions?
We'll keep rolling.
Okay, I'll be pretty short. Good to see you all again. Kyle Miller, finished my 17th year in Westfield Washington School this year, so ready to begin 18. So I will stay short, but really I think in this room we would probably all agree that there are a set of skills that kids would need to navigate everything that you've heard about today, right? In order to successfully engage in all of the rigor and things that are happening at the high school, for the student athlete who has to balance a job and athletics, for the student who's coming from a challenging home to actively engage in classroom is pretty significant. So there's a set of skills that kids need to be able to do that to successfully navigate the school environment, but we also know that those skills help them successfully navigate whatever path they choose to be on as they leave our hallways. So 2 things I want the board to know. Number 1, that the Indiana Department of Education does have a set of mandated employability skills. Those skills fall in 4 broad categories that you see up on the screen. So work ethic, mindset, learning strategies, and social and emotional skills. I want to highlight just for you tonight that the social and emotional part. So of those social and emotional skills, the state of Indiana has mandated that K-12 schools develop 3 broad competencies: regulation, connection, and collaboration. You've heard those words a lot already, connection and collaboration, right? The ability for a student to actively participate in a conversation in class, to understand another person's point of view. Regulation, the ability to understand what their emotions are and successfully regulate them in a way that doesn't have them flipping over desks or getting into fights, that they're actually able to navigate challenging situations. So those are the 3 broad categories. Underneath those competencies are specific standards, just like academic standards, that are mandated by the state of Indiana to be taught. One of the things that I want the board to know is the process we've used to, what was the term, Westfieldize it? Right? As we think about those 3 broad categories, 2 years ago, we led a group of K-6 educators representing every one of our schools, every one of our grade levels. There were counselors, teachers, special education teachers, administrators, part of this group, about 40 individuals who dove deeply into those 3 competencies and the associated standards that are listed from the Department of Education to determine what are the essential standards within those competencies that our kids would need to know and be able to do. Part of the PLC process that we continue to use throughout the district. So our teachers, our educators were the ones that were diving into those standards and saying, hey, based on what we know, what are the most essential standards that our kids need to know in these 3 areas? And then once we decided what those were, we unwrapped those into specific learning targets. So this is just a quick example of, again, you've heard Dr. Kaiser and Dr. Atha talk a lot about vertical articulation and how do we build from K all the way to 9 through 12 where they're actually having to navigate some of these situations. What are some of those initial building blocks? So like if you just look at specifically collaboration, active listening was identified as a particular skill that educators in our district thought were essential. What we're continuing to challenge ourselves to do is move beyond words or broad competencies and get down to the specific skill. So if you're with me a lot, you'll hear me say, okay, what does active listening mean? What do I need to teach a kid to do to be able to actively listen? What skill can we identify? And that's the work that we've done here. So when you look at active listening, we're talking about, well, eye contact is part of active listening. However, just by looking at me in the eye doesn't mean that you're actually listening to me. It just maybe means that you're looking at me, right? But that's part of it. So we can teach a kid how to have good eye contact. We can teach a kid how to rephrase what I just heard you say, right? Jimmy, I heard you say earlier that you had some questions about that. I'd like to address that now. I was listening and I can rephrase what I heard Jimmy say, right? So we have to break down these, what we typically in education have as broad competencies to the skill level. And we're using our educators to do that. So really those are the 2 things that I wanted you to highlight is just that the state has mandated that we have skills that we need to be teaching and developing K through 12 that are essential for kids to navigate school, but also more importantly, life. And then the process we're using through the PLC process to identify what do we want all kids to know and be able to do at this particular grade level in this particular stage of their life within these broad competencies. So that was quick because I know Ryan's got a lot to talk about with curriculum, but I did want the board to know that these exist and we're actively developing and that there are ways in which that we can integrate them.
Can I just ask one quick question?
You sure can, Amber.
So when you say you're gonna Westfield this version, like Alicia's, so are we gonna use the state words regulation, connection, and collaboration, or are we going to use your bullet point of active listening, or can we just use guiding principles?
So I would say those guiding principles are our guiding light, right? Those are the 5 things that are an umbrella, but I'll continue to say, how do we break that down into skills? So responsibility, I love it, it's a great thing, but what skills does a kid need to become responsible? Or to have compassion, that's a guiding principle, right? So what skills do we need to unwrap to have compassion? That's where this work is saying, okay, well, you have to understand your own emotions. You have to understand the perspective of others in order to have compassion with them. So we're breaking those down into specific skills. So the 5 guiding principles still are those broad 5 guiding lights, but we're going to unpack those into specific skills, utilizing what the state has mandated us to teach.
Okay, so then are we going to share that we're doing this, or are we just gonna do this? Like, are we gonna like really go and promote that we're doing these new words, these new regulations?
So I'm going to jump in, and I think now you can see the connection. The state has had these employability skills, which I would say a few folks have dealt with, mostly counselors. And when it comes to, yeah, they're mandated, but they look at Kyle and the counselors, that's your job. There's no way that our counselors can do all that. Now, if you look at, just quickly make the connection and look at those 5 broad categories, part of what you see the state designing is academic. They are hearing from employers that you are sending us kids that have knowledge and expertise in academics that are incredible, but they can't regulate their emotions. They don't show up for work. They can't work hard, 6 hours, 8 hours, right? So part of this connection, right, it's all our responsibilities. And so we are, part of what tonight is, part of what the retreat people heard is, we're connecting. Everybody's responsible for both academic and employability skills going forward. one of the things we still need to do, and it's a work in progress even academically, what is essential? You can't do it all. We believe our guiding principles have a place in this work, and then we need to unpack those so that at first grade, you're not going to teach it all. Here's what's essential. We wouldn't want anyone to leave first grade without these skills that you identify on the employability side. And then we lay that out for the journey. Ultimately, I believe we need and Alicia knows this, a portrait or a profile of a graduate at Westfield that then is a culmination of that journey. And we say to people, the kiddos who leave us, here's what you can expect. I think people tell us they know that. We know that when they went to Westfield High School and so forth. But we're going to clarify it because that needs to be clarified. This is what we're about in this journey. And then if a kiddo is struggling in any of those areas, we provide the intervention. We provide the support based on that data to say they can't, they haven't mastered this skill.
I think just as a parent, I think it just starts to get confusing. I know when I first got on the board, we talked about grit, and you have a kindergarten, you're like, grit, what are we talking about? And I think, so that was really my question is if we're gonna throw out some more words, like, are we doing that or not doing that?
So here's one that I say it too, right? Inclusion, but sense of belonging. We've said it tonight, right? Sense of belonging is an outcome, right? You don't teach a sense of belonging. It is an outcome from work in an environment we create in our classroom. So what are those things as a teacher, because we know kids who feel they belong are going to be better engaged. And when you're better engaged, you're going to have confidence to learn. But so what are those things in my classroom that I can do to develop a sense of belonging for students and make them feel welcomed, right? It's one thing to say. So that's over here. Kyle, we're going to do this work. We're going to engage in this work much like Ryan has done and Lindsay has done in the program evaluation. And then it'll roll into, it may be that we have some adopted tools to help teach different skills at different places and to assess those. We have to figure out how to assess it, right? Where are we and where can we go? And that's tough work, especially in this area, but we're going to do it. So what you heard tonight was kind of the kickoff of where we're going. And Thursday, when we're with 140 collaborative team leaders, they're going to hear it too, right? This is the work that we're going to do, and we're going to clarify that for parents, because as a parent, you're the first teacher of your child, right? You're partnering with us. Thank you for doing that and for trusting us, but you're always the first educator. We support you in that journey, and we have some things we can help with, like these academic skills and these employability skills, so that when your kiddo crosses that stage and we're all cheering for him, you get to hand the diploma to him or her, and then they're ready to do whatever they want to do and do it successfully.
That's the ongoing work, right? Is to take grit and say, okay, what skills do you need to have grit? So we're trying to drill down even further, and that's the ongoing work we'll be doing. Right?
Not only so we know it, but so we can measure it too.
Yes.
Know what it is and then measure it. Dr. Hoover.
Thank you, members of the board, and thank you to the curriculum team for leaving me 90 seconds to explain our curriculum for the district.
You got
Luckily,
a minute.
I have this spiel down to a quick 60 seconds. So real quick, this is just a review. I wanted you guys to know that our teachers have done an amazing job in the last 2 years working on our committees. I've had the luxury of just sort of being one of the organizers. They've done the hard work, which is the review of our resources that the state has provided. This is where we're at through K through 8. Our high school team is in the process of updating their language arts. Next year, we broke our language arts into K through 6, and then really 6 through 8 is going to be kind of its own entity, and then 9 through 12 is going to be looking at that this year. What I don't have on here is, in addition to this, we did all of our related arts last year. We did all of our CTE. world languages, and then we did, of course, language arts at K through 5, excuse me. So quite a bit going on in the last 2 years, but this is where we stand as of now in our core, and this is just for the most part language arts and math. I did put on some science and social studies. Obviously, at the high school level, those classes and those resources are much broader just because of the nature of the classes they have there. Most of our high school teachers in science and social studies adopted a resource for their particular class, and they did it in the same process, though. So what did we kind of do? A couple of things that we're going to be doing next year. As you guys well know, we adopted and you approved the CKLA program for our K through 5 learners moving forward. So what we're going to be doing this year in our English language arts meetings is really kind of looking at units and planning an instructional calendar. We would do that with all resources. Whenever you get a new resource, you take it, you look at the essential standards, and then you look at the resource, and then you kind of do an integration of the two, and you create a calendar, or sometimes people call it a scope and sequence, the calendar map. All those are kind of interchangeable. We'll be looking at the review and adopting the assessments that come along with it. Looking at the content and making decisions by grade level, if there are some stories or units that need to be supplemented, supplanted, or even removed, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Creating a skills crosswalk. What that means is if we do need to talk about our essential skills, if we make any adjustments, we want to make sure that we are including them in the resources or the supplementals that we're bringing in. And then just adjusting or modifying any language as needed. One of the key parts when we talked about CKLA and when I presented with you at the last board meeting was just a few questions that we had received from some teachers about just some questions they had with the content. With the new resource, that's pretty common. And we had talked about, Dr. Kaiser and myself and a few others talked about, and then obviously shared it with you, creating a parent/teacher committee, which would be essentially another way of us being able to get feedback from our patrons and giving some of our constituents an opportunity to kind of review things, share their feedback with myself and Dr. Atha, and then with our English Language Arts Committee as well. So we will be doing that. I have held off on that because the resources are still coming in, but they actually started coming in this week. So what we're going to probably do is a starting point. I've already reached out to principals and teachers, but we are going to probably look at utilizing some of our PTO members and people that are involved in our schools already and seeing that they love to serve on, probably once a month and just really looking at some of the resources within CKLA. So I feel really good about that. We'll do that, and then recommendations will be considered and reviewed by the Language Arts Committee, CTL leaders, and then of course Dr. Atha, myself, and other members. So what is a typical English Language Arts meeting going to look like this year? If you guys remember, last year we met once a month. We're going to continue to do that. Now, normally, like for math this year, we did that for Reveal Math when we adopted. We met once a month, and we did the program evaluation, and then we adopted the resource. And then this year, we met, but we only met like 3 times. And it was to bring those leaders on that team back together, and then to bring back feedback from teachers that are not on the committee to say, here's all the things that we're experiencing. Because language arts is so involved, and quite honestly, there's a lot of passion for it, especially at the K through 4 level, we're going to go ahead and meet once a month again this year. And I really feel like what we're going to accomplish in that is a couple of things. One, like I said earlier, we're going to develop those instructional calendars, assessments. We're going to talk about the pausing points and units. But more than anything, what I envision is we're going to stay about 2 units ahead of where the rest of the teachers are. This is going to be kind of a second strike, if you will, against trying to stay ahead to make sure we don't get caught off guard by anything. So what I will envision is there's going to be 6 kindergarten teachers, an instructional coach, and then other members like special education teachers, some of our EL teachers, and so forth, will be working on these resources. And we'll meet in August. We will be meeting in August, and in August we will be looking at units 2 and 3. And then as our teachers kind of move throughout the year, in September we'll meet again. And part of that meeting will be, the first hour is going to be getting feedback from teachers that aren't on the committee. The liaison will get that information and say, hey, for example, my team had a question about this, or we tried this and it didn't work very well. We have a better idea for next year. So gathering information. We will also say, we had some questions on this particular grade level or unit from our parent committee. Let's have a conversation, because what we have there is now we have every school represented. We will have an instructional coach there. We'll have administrators there who can then make a decision as a district, not as an individual school. And I really think that's going to allow us to not just have the resource serve us best from an instructional standpoint, but also meet our needs from a standpoint of our community expectations and recommendations. So I really feel like it's going to be twofold. And that will also keep us ahead of the game. So that's going to really be the process this entire school year. And I think between those two mechanisms, we really should be in pretty good shape. And then what I plan to do is just kind of update you guys as the year goes on as to any questions or feedback, especially if I'm hearing things, and kind of bring those things to you as a board. And then, of course, we'll do the normal things we do with curriculum, looking at formative and summative assessments, different things like that. And then last but not least, I wanted to let you guys know that our teachers is great as always. They gave up some of their own personal time this summer. When we adopt something, there's a lot of training that comes, and we try to do as much of that as we can during school hours, at PLC, after school, before school. But when you adopt a new English language arts resource, it was 6-hour training. And for 6 through 8, it was a 2-hour training. So after we had approval, we had to very quickly talk with Amplify. And I will say, I give them kudos, they were outstanding about getting them here. And the problem is we all know that people had a lot of summer plans and they're on their break and they deserve that time off to recharge and so forth. But I know that most of our teachers are going to want to come back having a pretty good understanding of the resource and not being overwhelmed when they come back. So we were able to do 4 trainings, and you can see the dates there. Those were 6-hour trainings, K through 2 at one, and then 3 through 5 at another. We had, and they do limit us to 30 people at a training. So we had essentially, the first training was actually 4 presenters, so we had 120 spots, and then we had 60 at the others. And then between that and 6th grade, I did the math just before we came in here, we had about 95% of teachers that were trained over the summer, which is outstanding. And most of the ones that weren't were either were just recently hired or just simply couldn't because of timing or maybe lack of being able to have support for young children. So for those teachers, we will make sure that they are supported still when we come back, and their team will to be able to help them out as well. One last thing we are going to do is we are going to, on August 6th, which is our second teacher day, we will do some training with Dibbles that Carmen's going to be leading in the morning. And then that afternoon, we are going to be meeting with our K through 5 coaches. And then, so for example, all 1st grade teachers will go to one building with their coach, and they will be planning out Unit 1 and talking about it. So everyone's going to go into it kind of at the same time. If there's any questions, we're going to address them right then and there. I think the key word is transparency, is we're going to have it all kind of out there and open and just say, guys, don't hold anything back. We got to have these conversations. There's going to be some times where there's probably differences of opinion of what this means, and if this may be something I feel like we should be fine with versus somebody else maybe saying, I'm totally fine with that. And we're going to have those conversations as teachers and as professionals. But I'm confident that we will hit that head on and won't have any issues with that. And then you can see one of the last things, our 6th through 8th grade teachers also did study sync trainings. That's what they adopted. We had 2 trainings for that. We have another one coming up on August 5th and 6th. So K through 8, I feel really good about where we're at. And then our 9 through 12 friends are going to be coming along board this year. And so at the end of this year, we should be able to say that we've done an adoption in all of our subject areas, really K through 12. Other than, I would say, math at the high school would be one that we will continue to review. We have things in place, but we'll take a look at that, as we continue to move forward. But other than that, we're in pretty good shape. So that's kind of a quick review of where we're at with curriculum. Guys, any questions at all for me?
I guess when you're pulling out and going a couple weeks ahead, and there's 10 choices, are you gonna, 10 reading choices, or whatever it is, right, like the CKLA? And is your team narrowing down to saying you can only use these 3, or what does that look like? So,
Okay.
a teacher that doesn't, that took the time to see all 10, and they really like
Sure, great question. So the key that you have to know about the way the curriculum's set up is they're all like, so at any grade, there are units. And within each unit, there's multiple lessons. So for example, I was looking at the units today, and Unit 1 for most has like 15 various lessons. Amongst those 15 lessons, there might be 4 core stories that they use throughout to teach the essential skills for Unit 1. So, and then in addition to that, there are related books that can, not part of the program, but it can be brought into the program. And I will say, most of the questions that have come up thus far are those related books that we did not adopt. That those are, if you wanted to bring them in. So the best example or analogy I can give for that is, say you went to a movie and it was a decent movie, and it said, or like on Netflix, it says, if you like this, you might also like, and it gives you examples, and you might be like, there's no way I would like that movie, or I'm watching that, let my kids watch that movie, but this one was fine. That's somewhat what this is we're gonna have that ability to do that, but those are not part of the core program. Now, part of the core program, our teachers are gonna look through, and let's just say there's a story that our multiple teachers say at a grade level say, I'm not sure this is age appropriate for our kiddos, or this might cause some problems. What I want to be able to do is come to a consensus with that grade level. And then we will give out talking points and say, hey guys, we're going to supplement story A with story B, and we're all going to do this, and we're going to sort of take away that choice. And that's going to be coming from, that's not going to be me or Dr. Ather deciding that, that's going to be our teachers having that consensus in our English language arts meetings. I fully believe that 6 pairs of eyes on that, representing their schools, and then also an instructional coach and an administrator being there. Now, of course, I'll give all kinds of feedback on that as well, but I really, truly think they'll be able to have those conversations. Now, will there be an opportunity or a time where maybe part of the group feels one way and part of the group, that may come up, and we're gonna have to work through those. I will say, I've talked to other school districts. Some of our coaches have gone to some trainings, and they've talked to a lot of people. And what I'm finding is the same 2 or 3 stories, or same 2 or 3 excerpts from a few stories, or even in one case, 1 or 2 words, even within a much larger story, the same schools are identifying the same ones, which tells me that there might be a couple we need to look at, but it's not a widespread problem. And then as far as bringing in other books that are outside so these trade books that I've talked to, that's going to be a recommendation of, these are the ones that we're going to utilize, and these are the ones that we are not going to. That kind of sounds very sort of top down, but the reason when I say we're going to say that, that's going to be the committee making those decisions and then sharing that with their colleagues, not Dr. Atha and I, for example, saying these are yes, these are no. That's going to be coming from our teachers. So, and I feel really good about that, because they're going to be very good about knowing the age appropriateness of their kiddos at that grade.
And I'll add, this series compared to what we're doing in the past, one of the past teachers was just pulling here, and you never knew what they were pulling. This is going to be very guided and very collaborative.
Yeah. It's very explicit and somewhat even, I hate to use the word scripted, but it's very sort of linear in its approach. And so I feel, from a standpoint, even from an instructional standpoint, I feel excellent about it. From as a learning it as a content, this is no different than other resources that I've been a part of before, that you kind of do this in year 1 no matter what, because there's always just nuances of each one that you have to, quite honestly, ensure that's going to work for your students.
It'll be very aligned. And again, we want a 2nd grade student at one elementary to have the same experience as another elementary at that grade level. And it takes time, but
I also, 3 years now, I think our teachers understand the expectation. So I want to be clear, we don't have anyone saying to us, like, we're afraid you're going to be pulling a story that our kids need, right? They're going the other way and saying, we don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we have a story that someone questions, right? And so it's almost to, but you have to go through the process. You can't just look at a title and say